Listen, if you want to experience this and this all in the same 24 hours, then Denver might be the right place for you. All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Tim Cameron, your host for Everything Denver, Colorado, where we talk about all things Denver real estate. And today we're talking about what it's like to move to Colorado in the winter, what you should consider, how to prepare yourself for it, and what does living in Colorado in the winter look like. Let's start off with Denver and the metro area generally has pretty mild winters overall. We usually get about 57 inches of snowfall here in the Denver metro area. Most of that actually happens kind of in the later winter and early part of spring. Generally, the beginning of winter, we'll get a couple snowstorms here and there. It's very light, airy, fluffy snow. This year, we had a little bit of a different one where we had a big snowstorm come in right after Halloween, dumped a bunch of wet snow on us. Kids got to go sledding. But for the most part, our early part of winter is going to have a drier snow, not as heavy, not as many frequent snowstorms. And then later in the season, February and especially March, those are our snowiest months where you can expect to see the most snowfall. All right, so what do you need to do to prepare for snowfall and living here? So number one, the question I get asked is, hey, will my vehicle do all right here in Colorado in the snow? And I will say having a four-wheel drive vehicle or some all-wheel type of vehicle like an SUV or something along those lines will make commuting in the snow a lot better for you. If you have all-season tires, generally you can get around pretty well all across the Denver metro area. The cities and the suburbs around do a very good job of keeping the routes plowed, at least on the main thoroughfares and the freeways. So generally you don't get snowed in very long. Now, if you're tucked into the back of a neighborhood and the snowplow route doesn't get to you for the first couple waves or iterations when it's plowing snow through the storm, if you're not on one of the school bus routes or maybe an emergency vehicle route to hospitals from different neighborhoods or something, you may be later on the list to get plowed. My street in particular is kind of nice because it's a school bus route and the plows come through pretty early during those snowstorms. So definitely something to consider when you're out here. If you are going to be tucked further away from the metro area and more of a rural community or a freshly developed suburban area or neighborhood that's on the outskirts of a town like Parker or Castle Rock, the snowplows might not get to you during those first waves of the storm. But if you have a four-wheel drive, all-season tires, you should be fine. Generally, you don't need chains on the tires here in the Denver metro area or even studded tires. They are beneficial if you just have a two-wheel drive vehicle or a very low-profile, lightweight vehicle in getting around. But for the most part, you'll be able to get around and commute fairly easily throughout these snowstorms. But so temperature-wise in the Denver metro area, like I said, pretty mild winters. Our average daily temperature in the winter is about 45 degrees in the middle of the day. And while you're in Colorado, you can really experience all four seasons in one day. You may go to bed, wake up to a snowstorm in the beginning early hours, and you're commuting to work, snow-packed streets. But by noon, the sun has come out and melted all the snow away, and it looks like a beautiful spring day again. You can experience all that in the same day here in Colorado. Now, I know a lot of places, especially north and the Midwest, once it gets cold, it really stays cold through the entirety of winter. And the snow that falls at the beginning of the season stays all the way through to the end of the season. Well, it's really not the case in Denver. We get snowstorms, but they melt off rather quickly. Another question I've had from people is, how much snow do I get? Do I need a snow blower? Will a snow shovel work? And that's kind of going to depend on where you choose to live. Most of the Denver metro area, you can get by with just a snow shovel. It will make your life easier to have a snow blower, but I've chosen not to have one just because I don't have a place to store it. You're only going to use it 2 to 3 times probably a season that the snow's going to be that deep or that heavy enough to justify having a snow blower. So I generally get out with my forced labor, aka my kids, with our snow shovels, and we clear off the driveway on our own that way. Little side tip, generally what I've found, especially if you're in a family community with a lot of dads, usually there's one dad who has a snow blower. And if you send out maybe the weakest or smallest of your children to start shoveling the driveway, and that dad is out snow blowing his driveway, maybe he comes and snow blows your driveway for you. A little bit of a pity snowplow, should we say? Not saying I've ever done that, but it'd work out. Anyway, if you're thinking of a move here to Denver, you might want to consider where your home is located within the neighborhood. Now, if you have a north-facing driveway, this can be a little bit of an issue in the winter. You just have to clear off your snow before you drive on it. In a north-facing driveway, I have backed out over the snow and had those tracks of ice build up on my driveway, and it really is a pain and takes forever for that snow to melt since it's not in the sun. My neighbors on the other side of the street sometimes don't even have to shovel or plow any of their sidewalk or driveway because it melts off by 10 o'clock in the morning when that sun comes out. But if you're living on the north side and you have a home where the driveway is going to be in the shade, it's something to consider when you're moving out here. If both houses were identical, one was on the south side of the street, the other was on the north side of the street, you might go with the south side just because you don't want to have to shovel that ice out of the way. But in the grand scheme of things, it really didn't matter to us. I know when we bought it, they said, hey, why don't you just put in a heated driveway? Well, it's going to be ridiculously expensive to operate throughout the year. And really, I don't mind getting out and shoveling the snow a few times a year. Road closures. Are there many road closures throughout the Denver metro area during these snowstorms? I will say generally not. Most of the roads stay open. The only time you see very many road closures are on some of the interstates and freeways when we get some of those big storms rolling in. South on I-25 might close just south of Castle Rock. There is too much snow coming in too fast and the plows and the crews cannot keep up with it to safely clear the roadways. Also, I've noticed on the east end of town that I-70, when you get out past the airport into towns like Watkins and Strasburg, those areas that are further east, they may close down the freeway if they're getting some of those high winds and the snow is falling too fast. But generally, if you're in this C470 bubble of Denver, you're not going to have to deal with many road closures. You're going to be able to get up and around in the Denver metro area. The other exception to that is our mountain driving. So if you take I-70 up into the high country and you're getting up to maybe the Eisenhower Tunnel, kind of before most ski resorts, they may have the road closed up there on some of the passes because the snow is just falling too quickly and it's just not safe for the plow drivers to get up and they can't clear it off quickly enough for traffic to flow through. So if you're planning a trip in the winter, you definitely got to keep a closer eye on the traffic. Watch for those winter storms throughout the mountains because they may shut the interstate in a place like Vail or Aspen, and you may end up having to bunker in for the night there before you can complete your trip. Lastly, one thing you should prepare for when moving to Denver is the big temperature swings. I'd mentioned we can experience all four seasons in one day here, and that really is the truth. You'll wake up and it'll be 20 degrees, freezing cold, and you'll think you need heavy clothes the entire day, but dress in layers because by noon, if the sun is shining and it's 50 degrees out, it's going to feel like a warm spring day, and you're going to get hot in your winter clothes. So that's why they say dress in layers here, because you will have to take some layers off, add some layers. When the time that sun goes down, because our days are shorter in the winter and it sets behind those Rocky Mountains, the temperature drops drastically. So we may have 20 to 30 degree swings in temperature all in 24 hours. So definitely something to be prepared for. Dress in layers and be prepared for pleasant middays and very cold overnights. Okay, finally, what does the real estate market look like in the winter? Is it something where you should even explore buying a home in the winter in Denver? I will say, generally, our spring market, like most of the country, kind of kicks off President's Day right after the Super Bowl. People start shopping for homes again, but I have noticed in Denver, it generally starts a little bit sooner than that. The second or third week in January, we start seeing a lot more buyer activity, a lot more people coming out to start searching for homes. They're past the holidays, they're past the new year, and they're out looking for their new home. And generally, a lot of those people that are starting in January are folks that were shopping maybe towards the end of the year, didn't quite find what they were looking for. There is limited inventory in the winter months. A lot of people, if they do have to sell their homes in that most stressful time of the year during the holidays, they really have to sell it. So a lot of people forego listing it in the winter. They want to list in the spring. The only downside to that is there is going to be more competition if you do sell your home in the spring. So if you know there's going to be 6 or 7 homes in your particular neighborhood coming up for sale in the springtime, if you have known and talked to your neighbors and found that out, it may be worth going and beating them to the market, going another week or 2 weeks sooner than the competition while there is lower inventory.
If we can beat them at their own game.
Now, if you are a buyer looking for a home and you are exploring moving to the Denver metro area, generally you can find a little bit better deal in those winter months. Like I said, people needing selling during the most stressful time of the year generally have a strong reason to sell, and they're needing to get that home sold and moved on to their next spot, whether that's a job relocation or something along those lines. Selling during the most difficult time of the year generally means you do have to sell. So can be a benefit for buyers. The only downside as a buyer is you may not have as much inventory to select from, and there will be more in the next couple of months. So guys, there you have it. I hope you got a good overview of what it's like to live, work, play, and move to Denver in the winter. When you're thinking of your move here, hit me up, call, text, or email. We'll schedule a call, find out what your needs are, and find the perfect neighborhood for you. We do a lot of neighborhood spotlights everywhere across the metro area, so you can see what the different neighborhoods are like, why people love living there, and what are any of the cons living there as well. So make sure you subscribe to the channel to see that content, and we will see you on the next video.